Hello friends, I just wanted to take a quick moment at the start of this video to let you all know that there is a bunch of content on the site that is similar to this video, basically games where I played against pro players and documented what it was that I did and what it was that I learned. And I just recently played against Liquid GH, who was playing Earthshaker, I was playing Broodmother, and I recorded an analysis that is on the site now on DotaAlchemy.com of basically what I learned in that game and how I ended up coming out on top. So if you guys want to support us a little bit more, if you subscribe to the site, it means the absolute fucking world to us. I cannot express my gratitude enough to all of the subscribers. If you don't want to subscribe, that's perfectly fine too. Just checking out the site and seeing the free content that we have that's not on the channel helps out a lot. So anyway, let's get right to the video. Hello friends, Jenkins Dota here, bringing you another Dota 2 video on behalf of DotaAlchemy.com, and this video is going to be the third episode in the Lessons from the Leaderboard video series. And in this video, we're going to be taking a look at Miracle. So I've had the opportunity to play with a lot of very high caliber players because TI8 is upon us, so everybody is in the North American region, and Miracle is included in that group of players. I played a few games against him. Unfortunately, I didn't play any games with him, so he just kicked my ass a bunch of times. I was the Necrophos in this game. He didn't go mid against me, but he's the Pugna, and he completely stomped this game. So I wanted to take a look at the replay and see how he's different from Sumail in terms of the mid lane and his playstyle, just because I know those are both two amazing players, and I learned a lot from playing against Sumail, so I wanted to see what the differences were. So the first thing that I noticed, which is interesting, is that he does this nifty little blocking trick where he stands to the right of the tier 3 tower. This is going to force the creep wave to essentially go to the left of the tower altogether, and the creeps aren't going to split up into multiple groups, which makes it a lot easier to block. Where he puts his camera now is really important. You can see that he clicks on the Weaver, sees that he has a Wraith Band and shared tangos, so basically that's a mid-Weaver. So he knows that the Weaver's not going to get to the middle lane to block, and as a result, he essentially changes his block because of this. So you can see that he blocks a little bit, but then he moves forward and just keeps running and doesn't try to block the creep. So he does like a little tiny block there, and that's essentially because the Weaver cannot get to this mid lane to block, so he's trying to get the equilibrium so that it's right in front of his tower. It appears that he focuses really heavily on keeping the equilibrium on his side of the river or in the middle, essentially playing this lane as safe as possible. And I have a theory on why that is how he plays. So I think Sumail in this matchup would absolutely go balls to the wall in this Weaver and just completely zone him. And hell, at this point he'd be between the tier 1 and the tier 2. But Miracle, he plays this differently. You can see that the Weaver, when he's trading uphill, the Weaver just misses on 2 attacks. So this is a very effective way for a Pugna to win this lane at this point, because Weaver maybe could actually trade with a Pugna in the early game, but if he's hitting uphill, he can't do that. So you can see that Miracle is focusing really heavily on watching if the Weaver kills creeps, looking at the HP of creeps, and trying to keep the equilibrium such that he can basically stand uphill. So if the Weaver ever does try to trade with him, it's not going to be an effective trade. And the reason that I think this is true and that Miracle is different from Sumail in this sense is because Miracle last picks his heroes, and this is how it is on Liquid. He gets his heroes last picked, and the panel in TI8 today, they were talking about how Miracle is this last pick monster player where you just pick him the best hero in the best possible scenario, and since he can play everything extremely well, he will essentially just carry the game. That's a lot of pressure to be on somebody. So you can see there, once again, he only nukes the Weaver, but it hits the range creep, so he's not pushing the entire wave into the Weaver because he wants the equilibrium to be here, because it's a defensive posturing instead of an aggressive one. But anyway, in any case, basically the reason that he does this and that he's very defensive is because he knows that as long as he's not completely being over aggressive and throwing this game, because he had that last pick, as long as he follows a structure, a formula that he believes will, essentially the reason that he picked the hero, as long as he follows that through, he's going to win this game, because this was a last pick Pugna. It's really good against the Necrophos, arguably the hardest counter in the game to the Necro. It's really good against the Weaver because the life drain reveals invis, and Weaver, when he runs away, he's going to take a lot of damage. Time lapse back into the life drain. Like, it's actually a really good hero against Weaver. And then it's good against the Ursa because the Ursa's physical damage, and Decrepify will obviously protect people from the Ursa's damage, and you'll see that a lot in this replay. He does a lot of protection of people with that Decrep. So it's very obvious that this last pick was an intentional pick, and I assume he's practicing for TI because he's going to get these last pick heroes. So basically all he needs to do is play defensive. He doesn't need to do what Sumail does, which is play like super hyper aggressive and force rotations and stuff like that, because he knows that all he needs to do in this game is basically exist and act on power spikes and fight when he's really, really strong, as opposed to trying to make a lot of space. He doesn't need to do that because he's the win condition in this game. And in the games that Sumail plays, he's essentially not the win condition. Not that he can't handle being the win condition, of course he can, but he's not the win condition. He's essentially just forcing so many rotations to the middle lane and causing so much pressure that everybody else on his team is going to win, or he's going to win if you don't deal with him well enough. Whereas Miracle is just saying, okay, I'm going to play this safe. I'm going to win the game solo. He doesn't care about his team. He's gonna completely win the game, and that's why he last picked. So it's very important to note that he doesn't just play defensively to play defensively. He does this until he gets to a certain point in this replay, and I believe that is level 6 on Pugna. He realized that on Pugna, against the Weaver, it can actually be a kind of hard lane until you get to level 6. Like, he could potentially kill the Pugna, especially without an uphill ward. Supports rotate, he could potentially die. But when he's level 6, he's so strong in this lane that you could see, since he pushed up and he started pushing the wave here, he's level 6. The Weaver actually can't do anything to him. He just completely zones the Weaver with that life drain. So basically what I'm saying is I think that the difference between Miracle and Sumail, and as a result Miracle and I, because I'm heavily influenced by Sumail in terms of how I play mid, I think that somebody like me would potentially try to apply a lot of pressure to this Weaver early, just because a lot of players in Dota, including myself, we like to just push our limits. We like to just pressure as much as we can. But Miracle, understanding that all he needs to do in this game is to basically exist and have farm and get to that level 6, he doesn't really try to pressure until that point where he knows that it's going to be a huge rotation to essentially deal with. So in this next clip, we can see one thing which is important, and then another thing which I think is incredibly, incredibly important in how Miracle plays. Number one, he focuses on these bounties a lot. He literally TP'd to get these bounties. And number two, and the more important thing in my opinion, is that he just killed me, but he didn't just kill me in any way. If we go back and look, he comes, he sees me, he drops the ward, and you can see that I used the scythe animation, but I had to cancel it because he dropped that ward. I think that 90% of Pugnas there, what they're going to do is just immediately use all of their nukes on the Necrophos and try to burst him. But Miracle has this way of playing where it seems like even though he has no idea who I am, he was still getting a read for me in the game, as if I was an intelligent player. A lot of people, when they play Dota, they just kind of do the same thing no matter what. They just have a formula for how they play. They play Pugna in a certain way. But I noticed that in this game, he was giving me a lot of respect. And not just me. He was doing this to everybody. He was playing as if his team was going to make the right choices. He was playing as if the enemies were going to make the right choices. So for example there, instead of just nuking me with all of his nukes and expecting to burst me, because maybe a lot of the time you can actually fog while the nether ward is being dropped, or you kind of get out of range, he knew that I was going to turn and scythe him, because with the items he has, that's the only way that I can survive that, or potentially pick up the bounty rune or something like that. And I actually have done that in a team fight before, so he essentially read me and was like, okay, this guy's going to make the right decision, which is to use that scythe. He didn't risk it at all. He just assumed I was going to make that choice because he knows that's the only way that I survive, and he's not going to be... He wasn't greedy at all. He knew that that was the... Why not, you know? This next clip displays, once again, that he has this faith in people, whether it be the enemies or his teammates, and he just plays to the best of his ability, regardless of if his team sucks or if the enemies suck. He just assumes that everybody... He has a respect. You can see there that the Jug had the Dark Willow stun on him, and Miracle stood right on the Jug, assuming that the Jug was smart enough to spin. And thank goodness he did, because I think that if he didn't, they probably both just die. They get rocked, Ursa blinks in, it's a really easy fight. But he assumed that the Juggernaut was a good player, and as a result, he got a few more hits off on the tower. So he essentially plays extremely efficient in games where his team is intelligent. And obviously, considering he's rank number 1 or something like that, he gets a lot out of it. And you can see exactly in that situation, he TP'd in, assuming that the silencer would use the global silence to kill the Weaver. He knew that that kill was going to happen. And I had this realization where, okay, we all know pubs are stressful, man. Like, they're super, super stressful. This game is emotionally exhausting. It is arguably one of the hardest things to accomplish, where you have a game where you don't feel frustrated, or it doesn't feel intense, or you don't feel exhilarated. It's hard to not feel very extreme emotion in Dota, simply because it's how the game is. And this game is played way better when you're objectively thinking about things. Okay, I need to do this, I have this job, my team needs to do this, and you're not acting on impulse, you're not acting on emotion. Imagine how calming it must be to completely relinquish yourself of any blame in the game if you are playing as if your enemy team is EG and you are playing to that caliber every single game. How could you possibly be at fault for anything? How could you possibly feel at fault? What more can you do? What would the point be in feeling negative emotions in that regard? There wouldn't be one. So it's a very freeing thing, I think, for Miracle that he plays this way. He clearly is not stressed at all in any of these pubs. Obviously, when you win TI, you're probably not stressed in pubs, but I don't think this guy was ever stressed in pubs. He's always been super high rated, and I feel like that's just because he plays with this respect for his opponents and for his teammates, that in almost no situation is he going to feel bad about the losses unless he personally screws something up. And that's got to be so freeing. And I think that's a really good way to gain MMR, is to look at things like that, because psychologically this game is, like I said, very, very exhausting, and that's a really easy way to lose MMR, is to just to allow yourself to essentially be exhausted by it. So that's a really good mindset, a really good way that I've learned to look at the game, is to essentially just fuck it, play like your enemies are EG, and play like your team is EG, and if they fuck up, well, that's not your fault. That's not, hands off, man, that's not on you. So anyway, thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I do genuinely appreciate it. I hope it was interesting, I hope it was helpful, and I'll hopefully see you guys in the next video.